Commander stood at the observation deck of Council Station Meridian and watched the stars. He had been doing this job for 3 years now, and every day felt the same. His uniform was crisp, his reports were always on time, and his smile never faltered when dealing with the other species. That was what Earth demanded of him. Patience. Always patience. The station was huge, built by the founding species of the Galactic Council over 1,000 years ago. 47 different species worked here, making laws and keeping peace across hundreds of star systems. Humanity was the member. They had joined 127 years ago, right after they invented faster-than-light travel. The elder species had welcomed them with open arms and many rules. Touched the data pad in his hand. Another complaint to file. Another incident to report. Another time when someone else would decide what happened to human ships and human people. "Commander," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Ambassador walking toward him. The old man looked tired. He always looked tired these days. Had been Earth's chief diplomat for 15 years, and the job was wearing him down. "Ambassador," said with respect, "I was just about to send you the latest report." Waved his hand. "Let me guess, they stopped another one of our ships." "Yes, sir. The medical transport heading to New Colony. They say they need to inspect it for biosecurity reasons." The ambassador closed his eyes and sighed. "That colony has been waiting for those supplies for 2 months. People are sick. Doctor sent me a message yesterday. 3 patients won't survive another month without the medicine on that ship." "I know, sir. I tried to argue with their patrol commander. I showed him all our certification documents. Everything was approved by the Council's own medical board. He didn't care." Walked to the window and looked out at the darkness. Of course he didn't care. They do whatever they want. The Council lets them do whatever they want. Knew the ambassador was right, but he couldn't say it out loud. Not here, where every word might be recorded. "Should I file a formal complaint?" "Yes, file it. Just like we filed complaints the last 100 times. Maybe in 4 or 5 months, the Council will decide to give us back our own medical supplies. Maybe by then, we'll only have lost 3 people instead of 10. The words were bitter but understood. He had watched this happen over and over. Human ships were stopped, delayed, searched, and sometimes their cargo was simply taken. The reasons were always different: security concerns, safety inspections, trade regulation violations. But the result was always the same. Humans had to wait, had to ask permission, had to accept whatever the elder species decided. Captain Jin Park had called him last week from the defense vessel Resilience. "How much longer?" Jin had asked. "How much longer do we have to let them treat us like children?" Hadn't known what to say. The orders from Earth were clear. No conflicts, no confrontations. Humanity was still weak compared to the great powers of the galaxy. They had to be smart. They had to be patient. "I'll file the complaint today," said to the ambassador. "I'll mark it as urgent." "They're all urgent, Commander, but thank you." After the ambassador left, went back to his small office. The walls were covered with star charts and diplomatic protocols. He sat down and started typing his report, choosing each word carefully. He explained how the patrol had stopped the transport. He listed all the proper documentation the ship carried. He noted the urgent medical need on New Colony. He kept his tone professional and respectful. When he finished, he sent the report through official channels. Then he sat back and wondered if anyone would even read it. 3 days later, pilot Sung contacted him through a private channel. Sung was a freelance cargo runner, one of the few humans who still tried to operate outside the heavily controlled trade routes. His face appeared on screen, and he looked angry. "They took my cargo again," Sung said without greeting. 6 months of work. Everything I owned was in that shipment. They said it was contraband." "What were you carrying?" asked. "Mining equipment, simple tools, nothing illegal. I had all the permits. They didn't care. They just wanted it, so they took it." Felt his jaw tighten. "I'm sorry, Sung. I'll add it to this week's report." "Your reports don't do anything," Sung's voice rose. "We all know it. You file your papers, the ambassador makes his speeches, and nothing changes. How long are we going to accept this?" "As long as Earth tells us to," said quietly. Sung stared at him for a moment, then shook his head. "Maybe that's too long." The connection ended. That night couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the medicine ship, about Sung's cargo, about all the other incidents he had filed reports about. In his desk, he kept a personal log that nobody else saw. He opened it and looked at the numbers. In the last 5 years alone, patrols had stopped human ships 417 times. Human colonies had been expansion rights 12 times, even though the same planets were later given to other species. Human technology had been inspected, and then mysteriously similar devices appeared in markets. Human diplomats had filed over 1,000 formal complaints. The Council had acted on 32 of them. Added today's incident to his log and closed it. Tomorrow he would smile and be professional. Tomorrow he would file another report that nobody would care about. Tomorrow he would tell his people to be patient. But deep in his mind, a question was growing. He wasn't the only one asking it. He heard it in Captain Jin's voice. He saw it in Ambassador's tired eyes. He felt it in Sung's anger. How much patience did humanity have left, and what would happen when it finally ran out? He didn't know the answer yet. Nobody did. But somewhere in the back of his mind understood that one day someone would push too hard. One day the rules would break. One day humanity would stop asking for permission. For now, though, there was only waiting, only patience, only the slow burn of anger that nobody talked about but everybody felt. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the medical ship sat in custody while people on New Colony grew sicker. Somewhere out there, Sung was trying to rebuild his life after losing everything. Somewhere out there, other humans were learning the same lesson over and over. In the galaxy, patience was seen as weakness, but humanity kept being patient anyway because they had no choice. Not yet. 20 years passed, and things only got worse. Commander was now a senior officer with gray in his hair and a collection of ignored reports that could fill a library. Ambassador was still at his post, though he looked 10 years older than he should. The patience that Earth demanded was taking its toll on everyone. Doctor sat in her laboratory on Research Station Horizon and stared at the message on her screen. After 3 years of studying the ancient ruins on Planet 4, the Council was shutting down her project. The official reason was resource allocation, but knew better. She had found something important in those ruins, something that suggested a technology far more advanced than anything the current species possessed. She had reported her findings through proper channels, following every rule. 2 weeks later, the Empire requested access to 4 for their own geological survey. 1 week after that, this project was canceled. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," said her assistant, a young human named. He was packing up their equipment with angry, sharp movements. "They just take whatever they want." Wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Was right. She saved her research data onto an encrypted drive and put it in her pocket. At least they couldn't take what she had already learned. Far away in the asteroid belt of the Cygnus sector, another incident was unfolding. Pilot Sung was older now, still flying cargo runs and still getting stopped by patrols. But this time was different. Sung was commanding a merchant vessel called Prosperity with a crew of 18. They were hauling industrial equipment to a human mining outpost. The route was clearly marked as human trade space, approved by the Council itself. But when the escort ships appeared, they didn't ask questions. They just opened fire. Sung's last transmission was only 4 words long. "They're shooting at us." Captain Jin Park received the distress call 15 minutes too late. By the time his ship Resilience arrived, Prosperity was a drifting wreck. 12 crew members were dead. 6 survivors were pulled from the debris, including Sung, who was badly injured. The patrol commander claimed it was a misunderstanding. He said Prosperity had made aggressive maneuvers and ignored warnings. Captain Jin reviewed the sensor logs. There were no aggressive maneuvers. There were no warnings. There was just sudden, unprovoked attack. Jin filed his report with everything he had: video recordings, sensor data, witness testimony. He demanded a full investigation and justice for his people. The council's response came 3 months later. After reviewing all evidence, they determined it was a tragic accident resulting from miscommunication. The commander received a formal reprimand, nothing else. 12 humans were dead, and the punishment was a note in someone's file. On Earth, the political situation was changing. A woman named O was rising through the government ranks, and she was saying things that many people had been thinking but few dared to speak. "Patience has become surrender," she said in a speech that was broadcast across all human colonies. "We have obeyed every law, we have followed every rule. We have swallowed our pride for 147 years, and what has it gained us? Dead crews, stolen technology, rights. How much more are we supposed to endure?" Ambassador watched her speech from his office on Council Station. He should have been angry at her words. They went against official Earth policy, but instead he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe someone was finally ready to say what needed to be said. The next day requested a private meeting with the council's senior members. He wore his best suit and prepared his most careful words. When he entered the chamber, representatives from 15 elder species were waiting for him. "Honored council members," began, "I come to you with a warning. Humanity's patience is not infinite. We have endured much because we believed in this council and its principles of justice, but recent events have tested that belief." One of the elder representatives, a being whose species had been spacefaring for 5,000 years, made a sound that might have been laughter. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "No, honored one. It's a statement of fact. My people are asking questions I cannot answer. They want to know why we accept treatment that no other species would tolerate. I need to give them hope that things will change." Another representative spoke. "Your species is young. You must learn patience." Felt something cold settle in his chest. "We have been patient for 147 years. How much longer?" "As long as necessary," came the answer. The meeting ended with no promises, no changes, no hope. Walked back to his office knowing that his warning had been ignored. He sent a message back to Earth, marked private for the Prime Minister's eyes only. "They will not listen. They do not believe we will ever act. We must decide what comes next." Doctor learned that they had begun their survey of 4. She watched from her station as their ships descended to the exact coordinates where she had found the ancient ruins. They set up equipment identical to what she had been using. Within weeks, they announced a breakthrough discovery in ancient technology. Her research, her work, taken and claimed by others, and the council did nothing. Captain Jin visited the survivors of Prosperity in the hospital. Sung would live, but he would never walk properly again. The other survivors stared at Jin with eyes that held more than pain. They held anger. "What are you going to do about this?" one of them asked. Jin had no answer. His orders were clear: no confrontation, no escalation, maintain peace at all costs. "Nothing," the survivor said, reading his silence. "You're going to do nothing, just like always." Back on Earth, O's faction was growing stronger. Public opinion was shifting. More and more people were asking why humanity accepted what no one else would accept. The government tried to maintain the official policy of patience, but it was getting harder. Commander received a message from Captain Jin. It was short and simple. "How much longer can we keep this up?" Didn't answer because he didn't know. He updated his personal log with the Prosperity incident. 419 deaths over the years, thousands of incidents, countless injustices, and through it all, humanity had been patient, but could feel something changing. He heard it in people's voices. He saw it in their eyes. The anger was no longer buried deep. It was rising to the surface. It was in every conversation, every meeting, every quiet moment when people thought no one was watching. The galaxy saw humanity's patience and mistook it for weakness. They pushed and pushed, taking more each time, believing there would never be consequences. They didn't understand that patience was a choice, not a limitation. They didn't understand that every species has a breaking point. And they didn't understand that when that breaking point came, the most patient people often became the most dangerous. But no one was listening to warnings anymore. The elder species had ruled the galaxy for so long that they couldn't imagine anything changing. They saw humans as junior partners who would always follow the rules, always bow their heads, always accept whatever was given to them. They were about to learn how wrong they were, but not yet, not quite yet. There was still one more line that hadn't been crossed, one more incident that would finally shatter humanity's patience forever. The planet was called New Sol. It was a beautiful world, mostly covered in farmland and small cities. 50 million humans lived there, growing food that fed 3 other colonies. Children went to school, people worked their fields, and life was peaceful. It was exactly the kind of place humanity had dreamed of when they first reached for the stars. On a clear morning, with the sun just rising over the eastern continent, everything changed. Governor Han was drinking her morning tea when the alarm started. She ran to the command center and saw what every person on New Sol would soon see. Ships, warships, dozens of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly above the planet. "Get me Commander," she ordered her staff. "Get me anyone from the Council, and someone tell me what those ships are doing here." The answer came quickly, delivered by a commander whose face filled every screen across the planet. "Attention, New Sol. We have detected weapons signatures from your surface. By Council authority, we are here to verify your compliance with military restrictions. You will allow our forces to occupy inspection positions immediately." Governor felt her blood run cold. "What weapons? There are no weapons here. We're a farming colony." She sent an emergency transmission to Council Station. Commander received it and immediately pulled up all sensor data from New Sol. Every scanner, every satellite, every monitoring station showed the same thing. No weapons, not a single military installation. The planet was exactly what it claimed to be. Rushed to the council chambers with his data. "This is wrong," he said, showing them everything. "There are no weapons on New Sol. The claim is false. You need to order them to withdraw." The council members looked at his data. They nodded and agreed it showed no weapons. Then they did what they always did. They called a meeting to discuss it. They would debate and investigate and form committees. It would take time, maybe days. Days couldn't believe what he was hearing. There are 50 million people on that planet. They are demanding to occupy it right now. We need action immediately. "We must follow proper procedures," one of the elder representatives said calmly. "They are a founding member. We cannot simply order them to leave without full investigation." Governor refused to let forces land. She had no military, no way to stop them, but she wouldn't simply surrender her planet based on false accusations. "I am requesting council protection," she transmitted. "We are a peaceful world. We have done nothing wrong. We need help." For 3 days, the warship stayed in orbit while the council debated, sent report after report. Ambassador made speech after speech. Captain Jin brought his ship Resilience to the edge of the system, following orders not to engage but ready to act if things got worse. On the 3rd day, things got worse. New Sol had an orbital school, a space station where children from across the planet learned science and engineering. It was a symbol of hope, a place where the next generation prepared for the future. 200 children lived there with their teachers. When the blockaded the planet, the school's supplies were cut off. After 3 days, the station was running low on essentials. The director decided to evacuate the children to the surface until the crisis ended. It was a simple, peaceful decision. A civilian shuttle, marked with all proper identification, carrying 127 children between the ages of 8 and 14. The shuttle launched with full clearance from New Seoul Traffic Control. It sent all proper signals. It followed standard approach vectors. Every rule was followed perfectly. The shot it down anyway. One moment the shuttle was descending peacefully. The next, weapons fire tore it apart. There was no warning, no communication, just sudden, brutal violence. 127 children died. Their teachers died with them. The debris burned up in the atmosphere, visible from the ground as bright streaks across the morning sky. Governor watched from her command center and felt the world stop. All across New Seoul, parents realized what those streaks of fire meant. Schools went silent. Work stopped. 50 million people stood in shock, trying to understand what had just happened. Commander saw the sensor recordings. He saw everything. The shuttle's identification signals, its peaceful trajectory, the complete absence of any threat, and then the weapons fire. He played the recording for the council. Every member saw it. The evidence was perfect and complete. An unarmed civilian vessel carrying children had been destroyed without warning. "This is murder," said, his voice shaking with rage he couldn't hide anymore. "This is the murder of children. What are you going to do about it?" The council went into emergency session. They debated for 6 hours. Then they issued their response. A statement expressing deep regret for the tragic incident. A call for investigation into the circumstances. A recommendation for improved communication protocols to prevent future misunderstandings. That was all. Words, just words. Ambassador sat in his office, reading the council's statement over and over. His grandson had been on that shuttle. A boy named 12 years old who loved astronomy and wanted to be a starship captain. Now he was ash in the atmosphere. Stood up slowly. He walked to the council chambers one last time. He didn't request permission to speak. He didn't follow protocol. He simply walked to the central podium and began talking, and his voice was broadcast across every human colony, every human ship, every place where his people could hear. "My name is Nam. I have been Earth's ambassador to this council for 23 years. I have followed your rules. I have trusted your justice. I have counseled my people to be patient, to have faith in this institution. Today, my grandson died because I gave that counsel. Today, 126 other children died because humanity believed in the Galactic Council." He looked around at all the representatives, all the species who had told him to wait, to be patient, to accept. "We came to you in peace. We obeyed your laws. We swallowed our pride for 147 years. We accepted restrictions no other species would tolerate. We filed reports that were ignored. We watched as our ships were attacked, our people killed, our rights. Through it all, we remained patient because we believed patience would be rewarded with justice." His voice grew harder. "Today you allowed the murder of our children and called it regrettable. Today you proved that patience was foolishness. Today you showed us that we will never receive justice from this council." Took off his ambassador's insignia and placed it on the podium. "Humanity's patience is broken. We will no longer ask for permission to exist. We will no longer accept rules that don't apply equally. We will no longer pretend this council serves justice." He looked directly at the representative. "And we will no longer accept that there are no consequences for killing our children." Ambassador walked out of the council chambers. Within hours, every human ambassador and liaison officer was recalled. Every human ship received new orders. Every human colony was put on alert. Captain Jin sat in his command chair on resilience and read his new orders. They were simple and clear. After 147 years, They said something humanity had never been allowed to say before. All human forces are weapons-free. Defend our people, no restrictions. Jin looked at his crew. He saw their faces. He saw their anger and their grief and their readiness. You all saw what happened, he asked. They all had, everyone had. Then you understand what happens next, Jin said. For 147 years, we've shown them patience. Now we show them what we really are. He opened a communication channel to all human ships in the sector. This is Captain Jin Park. They have declared themselves our enemies by their actions. Earth has given us permission to act. It's time to remind the galaxy that patience is not weakness. Target the battle group at New Seoul. We're going in. Across human space, ships began to move. Captains opened sealed orders. Weapons that had been hidden came online. Technology that humanity had been developing in secret for decades activated. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had been holding back all this time. The breaking point had come. There was no going back now. The commander at New Seoul had been in space combat for 30 years. He had fought in 6 wars and never lost a battle. When his sensors showed human ships approaching, he almost laughed. Humans were restricted to basic military technology. Their ships were small and their weapons were limited by council regulations. His battle group consisted of 42 warships. The humans were sending 12. Prepare to destroy them, he ordered. Show them what happens when children play at war. 6 hours later, he was dead and his fleet was scattered debris. Captain Jin's attack was like nothing they had ever seen. The human ships moved wrong, faster than they should, with maneuvers that physics shouldn't allow. Their weapons hit with impossible precision from distances that should have been too far. Their shields didn't just deflect energy, they seemed to absorb it and redirect it. The first ship exploded before its commander even understood what was happening. The second managed to fire back, but the human shields turned the blast aside like it was nothing. By the time the third ship tried to retreat, it was too late. The humans had surrounded them. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. In 6 hours, 42 warships became wreckage. The humans lost nothing, not one ship, not one person. The galaxy watched in shock. This couldn't be right. Humans didn't have this technology. The council had inspected their ships, reviewed their research, limited their development. How was this possible? Doctor was sitting in a research facility deep inside Earth's moon when she got the call to explain. She appeared on a broadcast that went to every species in the galaxy, and she smiled as she spoke. You want to know how we did it, she said. It's simple, we followed your rules exactly. You said we couldn't develop military weapons, so we researched everything else. We studied quantum physics, gravity manipulation, energy systems, shield technology. All perfectly legal civilian research. Then when we needed to, we applied it. She brought up images of technology that made the elder species scientists stare in disbelief. While you were inspecting our warships, we were building new ones in secret. While you were stealing our commercial technology, we were developing things you couldn't imagine. While you were telling us to be patient, we were getting ready. Doctor's smile faded. You thought patience meant weakness. You were wrong. Patience meant we had time to prepare. Across the galaxy, more human ships were moving. Pilot Sung, recovered from his injuries but still walking with a cane, led a squadron of fighters toward the forward operating bases near human space. They expected a small raid. What they got was total destruction. Sung's ships used technology that seemed like magic. They appeared in places they shouldn't be able to reach. They coordinated with perfect precision. Communications that should have taken seconds happened instantly. They didn't understand it was quantum entanglement communication, technology the Council believed was still theoretical. One by one, the bases went dark. Sung didn't stop. His orders were clear. Remove every military asset within 10 light-years of human space. He carried out those orders with cold efficiency. Commander, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, coordinated everything from Earth's orbital command station. He had spent 23 years filing ignored reports. Now he was writing orders that reshaped the galaxy. Every human ship, every station, every colony received his directives. The military doctrine he revealed shocked even humanity's allies. Every ship is a warship, he broadcast. Every station is a fortress. Every human is a soldier if needed. The merchant vessels that had been bullying for decades suddenly weren't merchants anymore. Hidden compartments opened, revealing weapons. Civilian ships transformed into combat vessels in minutes. The entire human merchant fleet became a navy. Mining stations deployed defensive grids that could stop battleship attacks. Colony worlds activated planetary shields that had been disguised as weather control systems. Humanity hadn't just been building weapons in secret. They had been building everything in secret. 3 weeks after New Sol, the Empire's military was crippled. Their fleets were destroyed or scattered. Their bases were gone. Their core worlds were surrounded by human ships that waited in orbit like patient predators. And still humanity pushed forward. Other council species prepared to intervene. The elder races held emergency meetings. They couldn't allow this. If humans could do this they could do it to anyone. They had to stop humanity before it was too late. But now Earth's Prime Minister sent them a message that changed everything. Her face appeared on every screen in the galaxy. She stood in Earth's government chamber, backed by Admiral, Captain Jin, Doctor, and Ambassador, who had come out of retirement one more time. To all species of the galaxy, said, her voice calm and clear, humanity seeks no empire. We seek no conquest. We seek no subjugation of others. We seek only one thing. Never again will any species dictate our rights. Never again will we ask permission to exist as equals. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Empire made a choice. They chose to kill our children. They chose to ignore all warnings. They chose to believe we would never act. Now they pay the price for that choice. Her voice grew harder. To those species who stand with you will be treated as enemies. We will show you the same mercy they showed our children. To those species who stand aside and remain neutral, you will be respected and left in peace. To those species who stand with us, you will be remembered as friends and we will remember our friends. It was a simple choice. Join and face humanity's full power or step aside and watch. Within 24 hours, 3 younger species announced their support for humanity. They had been bullied by the elder races for centuries. They saw humanity's victory as their own hope. Within 48 hours, 12 more species declared neutrality. They wouldn't fight but they wouldn't fight against them either. It was enough. The Council's unity was broken. The elder species tried to organize a military response, but their member states were divided. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to wait and see. Without unity, they had no power. Captain Jin received reports from across space. Their economy was collapsing. Their government was fracturing. Their people were demanding peace. The empire that had ruled for thousands of years was falling apart in weeks. They can't believe it, Jin told Admiral during a secure communication. They keep trying the same tactics that worked before, but those tactics only worked because we let them work. Now we're not letting them. Admiral looked at the strategic displays showing human forces across the sector. How long until they surrender? Days, maybe. They're finished. They just don't want to admit it yet. Felt no joy in the victory. Too many people had died to reach this point. The 127 children of New Sol, the 12 crew of Prosperity, the hundreds of others over the years. Make sure they know the terms: full surrender, full reparations, full accountability. And if they refuse, then we finish what they started. But they didn't refuse. 6 days after the destruction of their fleet at New Sol, their government sent an official surrender request. They would accept any terms. They would pay any price. They just wanted the war to end. Humanity had shown patience for 147 years. When that patience broke, they ended an empire in less than a month. Across the galaxy, every species learned a lesson. The quiet ones, the patient ones, the peaceful ones could be the most dangerous of all, because when they finally acted, they acted with the full force of all that restrained power. The elder species who had ruled for so long realized too late that their time was ending. A new order was coming, and it would be built on very different principles. Not on who was oldest or strongest, but on who could prove they deserved respect. And humanity had just proven exactly that. 6 months after New Sol, Ambassador stood in what used to be the Galactic Council chambers. Everything was different now. The old seats where elder species had ruled were gone. In their place were new seats, arranged in a circle where every species stood equal. No one sat higher than anyone else. No one had special privileges. The old council was dead. The new parliamentary assembly was being born. Had come out of retirement to help build it. After everything that happened, after losing his grandson, he could have walked away. But he chose to stay to make sure the new system was better than the old one. O had asked him personally. "You understand both sides," she had said. "You know what went wrong and what needs to change. Help us build something that will last." So here he was, negotiating treaties and writing new laws. But this time, everyone was listening. The Empire had signed the surrender documents 3 months ago. The terms were harsh but fair. They returned all disputed territories. They paid reparations to every human family that had lost someone to their aggression. They submitted their military to oversight by the new Parliamentary Defense Force. And they built a memorial. In their capital city's central plaza, a monument now stood. 127 names were carved into black stone, the children of New Sol. Above the names, an inscription in both and human languages said, "We learned too late that patience is not weakness and silence is not submission. We will remember them. We will never forget." Had visited that memorial 2 weeks ago. He had stood in front of his grandson's name and cried while citizens walked past quietly, their heads bowed in shame. Some of them left flowers. Some of them cried too. The war had hurt both sides, though everyone knew who carried the blame. Captain Jin was in orbit around the former military headquarters, now the command center for the demilitarized zone. His ship Resilience had become a symbol of humanity's victory, but Jin didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. "How many ships do we have patrolling today?" he asked his first officer. 23 human vessels, 12 allied ships from the younger species, and 16 neutral observers from species who want to make sure we're not being too harsh. Jin almost smiled at that. "They're watching to make sure we don't become what they were." "Yes, sir. Are you concerned about that?" "Every day," Jin admitted. "Power is dangerous. It makes you think you're right even when you're wrong. We have to be careful not to let this victory turn us into bullies." It was something Prime Minister O talked about in every speech. Humanity had won, but winning was only the first step. The harder part was building a galaxy where this kind of war wouldn't happen again. Doctor was working on that problem from a different angle. She had returned to the ruins on 4, the research site that had stolen from her. Now she worked there with scientists from 7 different species, sharing everything they found. "This is how it should be," she told her team during a meeting. "Knowledge belongs to everyone. We advance faster when we work together." One of her alien colleagues, a researcher from a species that had supported humanity during the war, gestured agreement. "Your people could have kept this technology secret. You could have used it to dominate us. Instead, you share it. Why?" Thought about the question. Because we remember what it was like to be restricted. We remember what it felt like to have our research stolen. We don't want to make others feel that way. We want to build something better. The new Parliamentary Assembly was humanity's attempt to build that better system. Every species got a vote. Decisions required majority support. Military action required two-thirds approval. No single species could veto everything. No founding members had special privileges. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments and disputes and political games, but it was fairer than what came before. Pilot Sung had used his war reputation to start something new. He called it the Free Trader Network, and it was exactly what the name suggested. Ships from any species could join. They followed basic safety rules and fair trade practices. In return, they could travel anywhere without needing special permissions or dealing with endless inspections. "This is what I always wanted," Sung said to a reporter who was documenting the network's first year. "To fly where I want, carry what I want, and not have someone stealing it because they can. Now everyone gets that freedom." The network was growing fast. Hundreds of independent traders were joining every week. It was becoming its own economic force, and the elder species who had controlled trade for so long didn't know how to stop it. They couldn't, really. The rules said free trade was allowed. They had just never expected anyone to actually practice it. Admiral had the hardest job of all. As the first Supreme Marshal of the Parliamentary Defense Force, he had to build a military that could keep peace without becoming an oppressor. It meant recruiting from multiple species, teaching them to work together, and making sure no one species dominated. "The goal is simple," he told the first class of officer candidates, humans and aliens training side by side. "We exist to protect, not to conquer. We enforce laws that apply equally to everyone. We answer to the Parliamentary Assembly, not to any one species. If we do our job right, you'll spend more time mediating disputes than fighting wars." One of the human cadets raised a hand. "But sir, what if another species attacks us like they did? What if someone else tests our patience?" Looked at the young officer. He remembered asking similar questions when he was young. "Then we respond. But we respond with measured force, not revenge. We defend our people, but we don't become monsters in the process. That's the balance we have to maintain. That's why this job is hard." He paused and looked at all the cadets, human and alien alike. "You're all studying human strategic doctrine. You're learning how we fought but the most important lesson isn't about weapons or tactics. It's about restraint. For 147 years, humanity had the power to fight but chose not to. That restraint wasn't weakness. It was strength. The hardest thing in the universe is to have power and not use it until you absolutely must." On Earth, in the capital city, there was a ceremony. The government was dedicating a monument to everyone who had died during the years of patience. Names covered a wall that stretched for 100 meters, the 12 from prosperity, the 3 from new who died waiting for medicine, the 127 children of new soul, hundreds more. Prime Minister O spoke at the ceremony. "These people died because we chose patience. Some say we should have acted sooner. Some say we should have fought back from the beginning, but I disagree. Those 147 years of patience proved something important. We proved we didn't want war. We proved we would try every peaceful option. We proved that when we finally did act, it was because we had no choice left." She looked at the names on the wall. "They paid the price for our patience. We honor them by making sure their deaths meant something. We honor them by building a galaxy where this can't happen again. We honor them by being the species we always claimed to be, patient when we can be, fierce when we must be, but always striving for peace." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Across the galaxy, humans and their allies observed it together. It was a reminder, a memorial, a promise. In the rebuilt Council Station, now called Resilience Station after Captain Jin's ship, Ambassador prepared for another day of negotiations. There were still problems to solve. The elder species were adjusting slowly to their loss of power. The younger species were learning how to use their new voices. Humanity was learning how to lead without dominating. It would take time, maybe generations, but they had time now. Looked out at the stars and thought about his grandson. Would have been 20 years old now. He would have been graduating from university, maybe joining the diplomatic corps like his grandfather. Instead, he was a name on a memorial and a reminder of why this new system had to work. "We won't forget," whispered to the stars. "No species will forget the day humanity's patience broke, and because they remember, maybe it won't need to break again." Across the galaxy, that phrase had become famous. No species will forget the day humanity's patience broke. It was in history books and military academies. It was taught to children as a lesson about respecting others. It was a warning to anyone who thought they could push the peaceful species too far. But for humans, it meant something more. It was a reminder of who they were, a species that would endure incredible hardship to avoid war, a species that valued peace so much they would accept injustice for over a century, but also a species that, when pushed past all reason, would respond with devastating force. The galaxy was different now, fairer, more just, built on principles of equality rather than age or strength. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that everyone had finally learned. The quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who choose peace over and over again are not weak. They are strong enough to restrain themselves. And when they finally stop restraining themselves, the universe changes. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not just military technology or strategic doctrine, but a new way of thinking about power and patience, and the courage it takes to use both wisely. The war was over. The peace was beginning. And every species, young and old, powerful and weak, would remember the lessons learned when humanity's patience finally broke.